what's up? Hello, my name is Emma and today is currently National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. So basically, I didn't really have anything planned for NEDA week, although I probably should have. So I got up this morning, haven't showered. This is my hair from yesterday. Threw on some makeup. I put on my shirt from the past NEDA walk that says Hope Starts Here. And I'm here today to tell you guys some things that I have learned being 6 years in recovery from my eating disorder. I entered treatment for anorexia when I was 15 years old in about August or September of 2011, I believe. I'm now 21, almost 22 years old, and I have been in recovery for the majority of those 6 years. So naturally, I have learned a lot. So today I just want to share some of those things that I have learned. Again, this is completely unplanned. I have no notes. I have no idea what I'm gonna say. So it's gonna be very raw and unfiltered, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I think the number one thing I have learned is sort of like the National Eating Disorders Association's mantra, and that is recovery is not linear. Entering recovery is not like you start out at a treatment center and as you get better, you just keep getting better and it's awesome, and in a couple of years you're like totally recovered. I would say for the majority of people who enter recovery for eating disorders, it does not work like that. In those moments where you are doing great and you consistently see improvement, I'm sorry to say that there are going to be times where you do drop a little and you do regress a bit, and there are definitely going to be times where you feel like you're at a really low point and things are going to start to get better from there. It's not one steady incline. It basically goes up and down and up and down. You might plateau for a little while, go down, go all the way up, go all the way down, plateau again. It is completely all over the place, and that is just how the recovery process works. It is long, it is tiring, it is tedious, but on those moments where you do see even the slightest incline, it makes it so worth it. Sort of related to that, relapse is going to happen. One of the little sayings that I've adopted over the years is that relapse is actually sort of like a sign of recovery, because you can't relapse unless you do have progress to show for what you've been doing. From my personal experience, my relapses are sometimes completely different than the thoughts and behaviors I had before I entered treatment when I was really suffering. It's been very strange for me to like sit in counseling and be like, this is something I never did before. Why is this happening now? I feel like this should have been part of my eating disorder when I was 15. I'm 21. Why is this new behavior surfacing? And I think that's actually attributed to recovery, because there are thoughts and behaviors that I have extinguished as a part of recovery, and there are different ways that my eating disorder tries to move around it and still stay present. So it's ever adapting. Relapse is something that is going to look different on everyone, and it might even look different to you each time it happens. There are going to be 2-day relapses, and there are going to be 2-month relapses. There are going to be times where there are a lot of behaviors you're engaging in. There are going to be times where it is just thoughts. It is ever changing, ever adapting. And I think one of the most important things I've learned about relapse through recovery is it is not just about making it so we never relapse again. That's like a very like forlorn goal for recovery that I think all of us would like to achieve in the future. But I think, at least in my point of recovery, the goal is more to make relapses happen further apart and occur for shorter periods of time, and every time you do relapse, you want to be incorporating more support, more coping mechanisms, more ways for you to have less relapses and for them to be less intense. So relapse is a part of recovery. It is going to happen, but it also is not the end of the world. It does not mean that you are failing at recovery. It's just a part of the process that every single person who enters eating disorder treatment is going to go through. Being honest is really, really important. The first year of recovery, for me definitely, and for so many other people I know in eating disorder recovery, is just filled with lies and tall tales and fake filling out worksheets. And I think that's a large reason as to why eating disorder recovery is so hard in the beginning. It's natural, it happens to so many people, and it's just sort of how the recovery process works, where you aren't ready to give up your eating disorder right in the beginning, so it's so much easier to lie about it. But it makes it so much harder on yourself because you're not allowing yourself to recover. Eating disorder recovery requires effort. You can go to all the sessions and you can fill out all the worksheets, honest or not, but if you aren't actively applying them to your life, you are not going to get better. And when you are in those moments where you just aren't trying, and like I said, it's gonna happen, it's a part of recovery, you need to tell your treatment team, because otherwise they aren't going to know. They are going to think that everything you are writing on your worksheets are correct. Therefore, they're going to continue recovery in a way that's not working for you. I can't really speak for friends and family and loved ones for how they react to eating disorder recovery, because that is totally unpredictable for absolutely everyone. But in my personal experience, any professional on your treatment team, in your recovery center, who are there to help you get better from this, they are not going to judge you or be disappointed in you for not following through, because they know it's gonna happen. They expect it. It's not always just the fear of disappointing others in our support circle. A lot of why we lie and why we aren't honest in recovery has to do with not wanting to feel disappointed in ourselves, and we are just pushing it away and ignoring it so that we can't feel that disappointment. But when you do address it immediately, you learn that you have no reason to be disappointed in yourself, because it's not always something that we completely have control over. And the more we talk about it and the more honest we are and the quicker we are honest, it is so much more beneficial for us. Not trying is something that happens to all of us in recovery, in all levels of recovery. I've been in here for 6 years. There are still times when I don't try as hard as I should or as hard as I know I can. But in the times when I'm not trying and I'm not putting the effort in and I might be relapsing, I've learned that when I do tell my treatment team right away that I'm not doing great, I am able to overcome it so much quicker, and that's what recovery is all about. Recovery requires sacrifices. I have changed a lot in 6 years independent from my recovery, but there are absolutely things that have happened over the course of those years that are changed in my life because of my treatment. I think the biggest sacrifice for my personal eating disorder recovery was definitely exercise, because I did not consistently exercise for almost the entirety of those 6 years. Exercise was largely related to the reason I entered eating disorder treatment, and for so many years the act of partaking in exercise was so triggering for me that anytime I did it, I relapsed. So I had to completely cut it out of my life. But there definitely are things that you really enjoy that you're unfortunately going to have to give up, at least for some time, in order to make your recovery as efficient and effective as it can be. Partying, alcohol, drugs, those are huge things that a lot of people really enjoy, but they unfortunately have to give up as a part of their recovery. And it doesn't always have to be a self-destructive behavior. Sometimes it might mean skipping out on an elective that you really wanted to take because you need more time to get from your home to your treatment center, or it might mean saying no to one of your responsibilities that you've been doing for a really long time just because you need more time for yourself, and it's hard to recover when you're putting so much of yourself into other things that aren't related to your recovery. So recovery does require sacrifice sometimes, but along the way, once you have given up these things and you realize how it is sometimes easier for you to recover without those things in your life, it does become worthwhile. Although sacrifice is a part of recovery, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to give up those things forever. So yes, I did not partake in recreational exercise for almost 6 years, almost the entirety of my eating disorder recovery. But in July and August of this past year, I actually started to take up pole dancing, which is a form of fitness, and it is something that has been a huge part of my life ever since. Along the way with recovery, and with me eliminating certain parts of exercise from my life, I have found a form of exercise that's really expressive that I love doing. It is not that triggering for me. So yes, there are certain things that you do need to place in a box for your recovery and just shove them away, but it doesn't always mean that they need to stay there. Some habits definitely should stay locked away for as long as you can have them there. But sometimes you're able to take that box out and delve into it maybe in a new way and have that be a positive thing for your eating disorder recovery. One of the things I've really had to start acknowledging over the past few months is that there is a possibility that these thoughts will not ever completely go away. There is a large possibility that these thoughts and these feelings I have might be a part of my life for until God knows when. And that's hard. That's hard especially for me because I've been in for 6 years, which is a really long time, and I feel like I've hit the point where I'm like, okay, like when do I get better? When do the thoughts stop? When do I stop resorting to these behaviors? Like, it's been so long, like when am I done? And I've just had to come to terms with the fact that I might never be done. You know, it's very possible that I might be 70 years old and still talking to a therapist about my eating disorder, and I might still have these thoughts about my body and food no matter how old I am. And that's really hard for me to accept, but I'm starting to get there. And I'm realizing, similar to the way I view relapse, it's not just about making them go away forever. That's not really something we necessarily have control over, but it's about putting the things in place that you need to combat them, to manage them. And that is what recovery can mean. It's not always about being perfect and never having struggles with your food and your body and whatnot in the future. It's sometimes just about managing them, and that's an okay thing, and that's something I think I will be able to accomplish in the future. Your recovery process is probably going to change along the way. The very beginning of eating disorder recovery is really, really intense. When I first started, I had a social worker and a nutritionist, and so I was doing all the worksheets and I was filling in the meal plans and I was reading all the books and whatnot. And then over the years, that sort of mellowed out to me just seeing my social worker, and it was like very talk therapy centric for so many years, and that was always what worked for me. And now currently I've sort of hit a bump where talk therapy isn't just cutting it anymore, and it's great, I love talk therapy, but I currently need something else in my eating disorder recovery, and that's just a part of how it works. I started going to group therapy, which is something I never had done before, and I love it, and it is such a wonderful addition to my recovery. And through the last few weeks and few months, my social worker, who is still the same social worker I started seeing in the very beginning, she's been giving me homework and worksheets, and I just have to place an order on Amazon later to buy a workbook that we're gonna go in together. And it's a little weird because I'm like, I should have been doing this like 5 years ago. Why am I doing it again? You know, I feel like the theme of this video is just, it's a part of recovery. There are going to be times where you need more support, and that's fine. Needing more support does not necessarily mean you're failing at recovery. It does not necessarily mean you're regressing. It might just mean that this has been working for a while, but I need something different, something fresh that's going to combat my eating disorder in a way that I can't with all my old methods. As we grow, not even just in eating disorder recovery, but as people, we are going to need different things to help manage what we are going through. And that's not a bad thing at all. It is something that everyone should be open to, because it is so rewarding to see a change happen because you made a change consciously in your life. And I guess the final thing I want to say is just as simple as recovery is hard. It's so hard. I always say that the first year of eating disorder recovery is the hardest because you're going from a place where you're probably very immersed with your eating disorder, and immediately it's like taken away from you and you don't know how to function without it. And even though I'm 6 years down the line and recovery has definitely gotten easier than it was in that first year, it's still really hard. There's been points in recovery where I feel like I am just battling myself every second of every day in every single situation, and that is so mentally exhausting. Whereas when you give into the eating disorder, you feel rewarded and you feel good and happy, and that is so much easier than constantly being at war at yourself. So clearly that's the more attractive choice. And through recovery, you learn the difference between healthy thoughts and eating disorder thoughts. So the eating disorder thoughts are the ones where it's like, hey, like it's so much easier to hang out with me, like we'll have fun together, you'll feel really great, it's so much better than just arguing with me 24/7. But through experience, you learn that the healthy thoughts, the ones that say, no, you always make me feel bad, this isn't what I want, yes, it sucks fighting with you all the time, but I feel so much better when you aren't on my back. Those are the healthy thoughts. I feel that those are the ones that are more in line with your personal thinking and not the eating disorder. And when you follow those thoughts for long enough, you do really realize that that's the rewarding part. So it is so tiring, and it sucks so much to fight with yourself so freaking often because you can't get away from yourself. But through recovery, when you have your little victories, when you do go up on a slight incline, you realize that that is really the worthwhile part. That is where the rewarding feelings of accomplishment are going to come from. And you realize that although it is so freaking hard, it is also so worth it to just see one day without your eating disorder completely plaguing you. And that's what makes recovery so worth it. So that really concludes just a couple of little anecdotes and stories and words of encouragement of things that I have learned through 6 years of eating disorder recovery. Because it is National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, I have left a ton of different resources and things on eating disorders in the description below if you would like to learn more about eating disorders, or if you might be struggling yourself, there are some resources down there for you. But NEDA Week is extremely important to me, and I'm very excited to celebrate the first one on my new psychology and mental health channel. So thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to know if those of you who might be in recovery, whether it's from eating disorders or for some other mental health related issue, definitely leave them in the comments below. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new one. Bye!